Tonight, inner Melbourne under water. Evacuations and rescues in city streets as rivers overflow. Also tonight, racing to the rescue. Horses herded to higher ground as towns across northern Victoria are evacuated. Brittany Higgins directly addresses her alleged rapist, Bruce Lehrmann, on her final day in the stand. And Brett Ratton shown the door at St Kilda. Good evening, Mary Gearan with ABC News. Victoria is facing an escalating flood crisis and the Premier warns it's likely to get much worse in the coming days. Emergency evacuation orders are in place for towns across the north of the state, including Charlton, Rochester, Murchison and Benalla, while Seymour residents are returning to their homes after floodwaters hit the town late yesterday. The flood warnings have extended from the Murray River down to the Surf Coast. And even in the centre of Melbourne, where hundreds of residents were evacuated after the Maribyrnong River flooded city streets. Leanne Wong begins our coverage.
Just minutes from the CBD, flooding hit Melbourne. People forced onto roofs and pulled into boats as the Maribyrnong River swallowed up cars, businesses and scores of homes, leaving residents in shock.
I can't believe how much water there is. I just can't believe how much water and people have lost their homes.
I don't know what to say, what to do. I've got nothing left. You know, the house is gone. The cars in the gates, everything's just gone.
Overnight, Maribyrnong residents near the river were ordered to evacuate as waters rapidly rose. Des McGowan was among those to receive a knock on his door.
It's been extraordinary. It's probably gone up by about 8 to 10 feet since we started to look about 6:30 this morning. I don't think we've ever seen anything perhaps like this at all. Hope we never do again.
By morning, emergency dinghies patrolled the flooded suburban streets, rescuing people and stranded pets.
Oh, I'm so sorry for leaving you there with that strange. I'm sorry to save you.
And taking them to a relief centre.
One of the SES stayed with him and he promised me he'd be rescue him, and he did.
I've done SES for 19 years now, so and this is probably the worst I've seen.
In terms of property damage, road, public infrastructure and just the sheer volume of water, I think this is going to set new records.
City streets next to Flemington Racecourse turned brown, and as the river rose, parts of Footscray and Kensington were also submerged, trapping some residents in apartments, while others found ways to get around city streets. By the afternoon, flood warnings were also issued for other Melbourne rivers, with the raging Werribee River breaking its banks.
It was lapping at the base of the bridge, and I haven't seen it this bad ever.
Amazing, really, but it hasn't happened for a long time like this.
I've been given evacuation notice.
We're asking you to watch and monitor your conditions. We're asking you to be prepared to act, because it could be, with this dynamic situation, that very quickly we move to an emergency warning or an evacuation warning.
Businesses in Maribyrnong are already counting the cost.
You can see all of our stock now is all underwater. We've managed to retrieve some, but we've got machinery that we couldn't get out quickly enough. The water just came up so fast.
We've had fires, we've had COVID, and now there's a flood, and the flood is hit so close to a city. I'm so proud to be a Melburnian, but at the same time I'm kind of now getting over it.
The massive clean-up is yet to begin. Leanne Wong, ABC News, Melbourne.
And Leanne Wong joins us now from the shores of the Maribyrnong. Leanne, what's the current situation with that river?
Well, Mary, the Maribyrnong River has peaked as of several hours ago. You can see the water is still taking quite a while to subside. The river is still quite fast moving, and the Angler's Tavern, which is directly behind me across the river, well, its ground floor is still entirely submerged, and the water level itself is actually not that much lower than what it was this morning when it was really lapping at that balcony level. Now, for Victorians who have been impacted by the floods, both here in Maribyrnong and right across the state, they can now apply for one-off payments of $560 per adult and $280 per child from the government, and that can go towards things like food, shelter and accommodation. So far, 2,000 Victorians have applied for these payments, and the government says it's trying to process them as fast as possible. For Victorians who are also in need of accommodation, Well, from next week, the government will reopen its purpose-built quarantine facility out in Mickleham. You'll remember that this facility was originally built for COVID. It will now reopen and can house 250 Victorians who have been displaced due to the floods for about 6 to 8 weeks. Though the government says that does depend on its emergency response and just the level of demand. And as we know, there's still thousands of Victorians right across the state, Mary, in dire need of assistance.
Indeed. Leanne Wong, thank you. And we also have reporters in some of the key communities around the state tonight. Nicole Asher is in Murchison, Alex Darling is in Charlton, and Sarah Lawrence is in Echuca. Let's go first to Nicole. And Murchison residents were told to leave today there. Nicole, what's the latest?
Thanks, Mary. Well, look, the Goulburn River is causing problems here in Murchison after flooding Seymour yesterday. Now, the Premier, Daniel Andrews, flew over this area today where communities along the river are keeping a very close eye on this floodwater as it moves downstream. And Shepparton is the next major town in its line, and that's expected to be hit tomorrow. But here in Murchison, the floodwater has reached about 10.7 metres in parts of the river and is expected to reach a peak of 12 metres during the night. So it'll be a very anxious night for many of the locals here. But there's been a lot of preparations happening here today, lots of sandbagging, though for some that was too late. About 40 residents, so permanent residents of the caravan park on the banks of the river here were flooded today. Just a short time ago, we were told a caravan was floating down through the floodwater. Another man had to be rescued from his home, which became an island. He had to be rescued by boat by the SES, and when we went to visit his house a short time ago, the road in, which was clear earlier, has now flooded. So the floodwater is, visibly rising here to, I guess, be almost possibly a repeat of what happened in Seymour today. But for a look at what happened across this region today, let's go to Danny Morgan.
An early morning rescue mission for horses trapped in floodwaters. Owners of the Yulong stud at Mangalore called for help to rescue 200 thoroughbreds, using whatever method possible to herd the horses to higher ground.
And moving them to the south end of the farm, which is higher land, so they will be more secure.
The floodwaters from a swollen Goulburn River swept through the property overnight. And it was the same nearby in Seymour, the rising water taking many residents by surprise.
You could hear it bubbling up through the floorboards, and in the bathroom, the bath was full, the shower was full, and the whole house was full.
Myra and John Garland were among at least half a dozen people and 2 dogs rescued by boat.
It's a fair old shock, all right.
15 people were evacuated from the nearby Seymour Motel.
We had a quiet couple last night at the pub and then went to bed and woke up in knee-deep water.
As day broke, those who left early returned to survey the damage and found it hard not to get emotional.
Sorry. Because this is my family home. My father built this house and lived here most of my life. And, it's never been water in it before.
The flooding has topped records set in 1974, and early estimates suggest 300 properties in and around Seymour have been impacted, including dozens of businesses in the centre of town.
We built this from a really tiny little trestle table at a market to this, and to have this happen, and it's just heartbreaking.
The clean-up has begun here in Seymour, but the worry for many people here is with more rain expected over the next few weeks, they may be doing this all over again.
Whether there's more water to come, like it's starting to rain again, whether they release more water from Eildon, what's to come. But, it's not life or death for us, so I hope everyone else out there is going okay.
Danny Morgan, ABC News, Seymour.
And let's go up to Charlton now, where the Avoca River is due to hit major flood level tonight. Alex Darling, the people in that region are no strangers to major flooding.
That's right, Mary. In January 2011, the Avoca hit the record level of 8.7 metres, having only got to 7.9 metres a few months earlier. And locals still tell stories about those two particular floods. And this particular flood building behind me is only expected to get to about 8 metres, either tomorrow afternoon or evening. But that will still be serious enough to inundate around 70% of the town, or 40 to 50 different properties. This house over here is expected to be one of the first to go under, and as a result of knowing that, the locals have spent all of today sandbagging, getting belongings above the expected flood level and decamping to the nearby town of Witchyproof, where the school is the nearest evacuation centre. Now, the river is expected to hit the major flood level around 10 p.m. tonight. That's 7.5 metres, and as I said, peak tomorrow. But once it does, the locals here expect the high floodwaters to last for about 3 to 5 days, given what they've been hearing from their friends further upstream at the headwaters of the Avoca River. Mary?
Alex Darling in Charlton, thank you for the update. And Sarah Lawrence, you were in Rochester today, but you were forced to get out yourselves.
That's right. We arrived at 9 o'clock in Rochester and we parked at the top of the main street. 3 hours later when we left, because floodwaters around the town where the roads were starting to get covered, the main part of town was completely underwater. We spoke to a pub owner who was adamant he was going to stay and defend his property because he's not insured. But unfortunately, by the afternoon, he had to leave because floodwater was starting to come in through the kitchen. And also, in another bad development for Rochester residents, the river height is already higher than the devastating 2011 floods, and the Campaspe River hasn't peaked yet. So it's a long night ahead for Rochester residents because the river is expected to peak later tonight, and then hundreds of homes will be inundated and dozens have already been inundated. Meanwhile, in Echuca, the Campaspe River is also causing a heartache here. It's rising around the Campaspe Esplanade, and there's already been a flood levee built with sandbags. But it seems that Campaspe River isn't the only river Victorian authorities are keeping a close eye on tonight, as Shannon Schubert reports.
Mount Emu Creek runs through the middle of Skipton near Ballarat, but today it split the town in two, breaking its banks and flooding the main street.
The water is rising much faster than we anticipated, so we've got the community are well and truly on alert.
It could have been worse. The town's new flood meters have just been switched on.
Actually went live last Monday, so that's being able to give the community time to be prepared.
David Honeybell is all too familiar with Skipton's past. He spent the day lifting the town's history to safety.
We were told it wasn't going to go as high as the 2011, so we've moved everything above that height.
It was an almost serene morning in Benalla, but residents there had a scary night.
Pulled an all-nighter, put the kids to bed, done the best we could, and then we got the notice to evacuate.
60 people were forced to use the evacuation centre as the town counts the cost.
And once the water goes down, as a community we come together to, put it back together, but that's the nature of a flood, unfortunately.
Here in Bridgewater, residents are watching on as the Loddon River rises. They say it's heartbreaking to watch the floodwaters lapping their homes and businesses. Virginia Highland and a team of locals spent the day getting important stock out of harm's way.
We're having a few frothies, it's thirsty work as you'd expect.
Sadly, I'm standing here waiting for it firstly to trickle in and then I'm leaving. Hopefully it's in and out quickly and the clean-up isn't really big.
Helen Geary's motel was full of stranded travellers last night when the police told her to evacuate.
So we woke them all up and told them to get out of bed and get going.
The river has impacted the main street right now. It's breached, so for everyone's safety, I'm stopping the traffic, turning people around.
And as this dislodged water ski jump demonstrated, a swollen Loddon is not to be messed with. Shannon Schubert, ABC News.
To the rest of the day's news now, and former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins has returned to the stand in the trial of her alleged rapist Bruce Lehrmann at the ACT Supreme Court. Mr Lehrmann has denied sexually assaulting his former colleague in the Parliament House office of their boss, Senator Linda Reynolds, in 2019 after a night out drinking. The court has heard Bruce Lehrmann told police he considered it was an innocuous night.
An ordeal over. Brittany Higgins left court today, her time in the stand at an end. In a testy session, she denied making up the rape allegation because she feared she would lose her job. "I'm not a monster. I would never do something like that." Ms Higgins conceded she did make some mistakes in her previous evidence. When quizzed about her demeanour when she returned to work after the night in question, she said she was pretending everything was fine. Then she directly addressed Mr Lehrman across the court, saying, "Nothing was fine after what you did to me, nothing." Ms Higgins emphatically rejected a suggestion Mr Lehrman didn't even go into the minister's office. "He was in there, he was physically violating me, he was in my body, I know." The court has now released other evidence heard this week, including from a security guard who said she'd found Ms Higgins completely naked on the lounge in the ministerial office. The evidence also included the 2021 police interview with Bruce Lehrman, when he said the pair had shared an Uber after leaving a nightclub and going to Parliament House, where he had to pick up his keys and organise some paperwork. He said he thought Ms Higgins also had work to do, and he didn't see her again once the pair had entered the office. Mr Lehrman told police he offered to share the ride with Ms Higgins because "I thought I was being a gentleman." In the interview, he denied having sexual intercourse with Ms Higgins and said he was so shocked when he learned of the accusation he wanted to die. "I was ready to go. I lined it up so Mum would get my super." He told police it wasn't an unusual night and he didn't think Ms Higgins was particularly drunk. "Nothing in my mind said that I needed to be looking after her." The jury has been told there are still several witnesses to go, including Senator Linda Reynolds, who is due to give evidence on Tuesday. Elizabeth Byrne, ABC News, Canberra.
The details of several Australian police operations targeting international drug trafficking cartels have been caught up in a massive data hack in South America. The breach happened in Colombia, a major producer of cocaine, and it's forced authorities here to scramble to make sure officers and informants are out of harm's way.
Police search warrant, open the door!
Police intercept tons of illegal drugs every year, in part by cooperating with their colleagues in other countries like Colombia. Australian liaison officers are based in Bogota, but a huge cyber hack has seen some details of their secretive work made available online. The AFP says it is assessing the information that may have been obtained and working to mitigate any potential threats to the safety of people or ongoing investigations. An environmental and anti-imperial group has claimed responsibility. It's been targeting police, militaries and resources companies in South and Central America and took this latest trove from the Colombian Attorney General's office. Some of the documents have information relating to former and current Australian operations, and they shine a light on the vast reach of drug cartels and efforts by authorities and agents around the world to disrupt them.
We obviously don't talk about AFP operations, and that is as you would expect.
Well, clearly this is a significant breach with very significant, maybe even life and death implications.
High-profile cases like that of Cassie Sainsbury have raised awareness here of the central role Colombia plays in cocaine distribution. But police warn their work is getting harder. They say our country's an attractive target for cartels because Australians continue to pay top dollar for drugs. Despite the hack, cooperation with the Colombians is viewed as too important to scale back, though Australian authorities plan to help the country better protect secret information in the future. James Glynde, ABC News, Canberra.
Donald Trump has been called to testify over the deadly riot on the US Capitol. The committee investigating the January 6th attack says the former president must be held accountable for his role in firing up the mob. The dramatic subpoena was issued during the final public hearing, where never-before-seen footage of the attack was played.
We have got to finish the proceedings, or else we're going to have a complete victory.
Previously unseen footage of congressional leaders taking in the severity of the riot as it unfolded.
Yeah, why don't you get the president to tell them to leave the Capitol?
The vision was shown at the final planned public hearing of the January 6th committee, which hammered home one message.
The central cause of January 6th was one man, Donald Trump.
The committee said he knew he'd lost the election, but peddled the lie that it was stolen regardless.
In a staggering betrayal of his oath, Donald Trump attempted a plan
that led to an attack on a pillar of our democracy.
In a dramatic finish, they voted to subpoena the former president.
Those in favour will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed is no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Failure to comply with a congressional subpoena can attract a jail sentence of up to 12 months. But whatever they might say publicly, the members of the committee know Donald Trump could well fight it.
If he wants to clear the record, he will have an opportunity to do it.
In a post on social media, Donald Trump asked why the committee had left it until now to demand he testify, but left open the question of whether or not he'll cooperate. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Washington.
A gunman who murdered 14 students and 3 staff at a Florida high school in 2018 has been sentenced to life in prison. 24-year-old Nicholas Cruz sat hunched as the jury read its verdict. Victims' families were visibly distressed and angry at the decision to spare him the death penalty. The mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School was the deadliest to reach a jury trial in the US. Under Florida law, capital punishment requires a unanimous vote, and at least one juror found there were mitigating factors in the gunman's background. Back home, it's been a harrowing week at the Disability Royal Commission that's been investigating the abuse and violence against people with disability in public places. Today, attention turned to online platforms, with representatives from Twitter giving evidence about what it's doing to improve user safety.
Discrimination and abuse are unfortunate realities for Carly Finlay.
Most days when I leave the house, there's a comment, stare, question on my appearance.
She also detailed horrific online abuse.
What does your vagina look like? What the is that? Looks like something that was partially digested by my dog. They describe me as a lobster.
Online platforms are difficult places to regulate, but are also important spaces for many people with disability.
People from the broad, and I know a very diverse disability community, use the online world for connection, for community.
In June, Twitter introduced changes it says make it easier to report abuse.
We've actually seen 50% more action taken in response to these reports than previously.
Though, with around 500 million tweets a day, it acknowledges there are difficulties in curbing abuse. Many people have told the hearing the law has failed to keep pace with technology and they'd like to see better safeguards put in place. eSafety concedes that it is a balancing act to prioritise cases.
One of the first things we ask somebody who reporting is what is their level of mental distress, because obviously we want to triage and address those reports.
Why should it take someone feeling suicidal or taking their own life before the eSafety Commissioner acts on it?
She says the time for change is now. Elizabeth Wright, ABC News, Brisbane.
To finance now, and the US markets lead the financial world, and it's not looking good. Here's Daniel Ziffer.
It's grim in the land of the free. US indices fell, then leapt after data showing inflation is running hot at 8.2% annually. Food rocketing and rents surging by the most since the 1990s. But forget today, look at the trend. The S&P 500, tracking the 500 biggest companies in the world's largest economy, is down 17% in a year. This is the period we thought we were through COVID and ahead of a predicted recession in the US. The index covering our top 500 companies is down 9% if you take it from a year ago, down 12% from January, but it followed the lead of the US up today. The value of Domino's pizza stock might look piping hot, but it slumped 60% from a year ago due to corporate decisions and people being able to leave the house for dinner again. Our dollar remains at 63 US cents, the victim of cash flooding to the security of the US dollar. On commodities, a tonne of iron ore got lighter today, shedding more than 2% in value, sitting near 94 US dollars. And streaming giants changed television forever, using a subscription model and not running advertisements. Netflix revealed today it will soon offer a cheaper subscription if you're willing to watch ads. Disney's going to do the same. As an Australian, you've already invested in the ABC's iView. No subscription fees or ads. A bargain. And that's finance.
Well, another AFL club is searching for a new coach after St Kilda last night sacked Brett Ratten 3 months after extending his contract. Club leaders say Ratten was blindsided by the decision, but insist a different style of leadership is needed if the Saints are to be premiership contenders.
The popular Brett Ratten gets full membership of the sacked coaches club, firstly Carlton and now St Kilda.
The decision to part ways with Brett Ratten has been a very painful one.
Painful indeed for Ratten. 3 months ago, things were looking up. His contract had been extended as the Saints were kicking goals until the wheels came off and they won just 3 of their last 11 matches.
If we as a club have regrets about that in hindsight, we cannot let those regrets get in the way of making the right decision for the future.
Last Sunday night, Ratten met with club power brokers for 7 hours but couldn't hold on to his job.
Reality is we're mid-table and we need to make change, in our view, to take the next step. That requires new leadership.
In a statement, Ratten said he was extremely disappointed with the decision but wished the players well. Time is ticking for the Saints to find a new coach, not just because other big names have already been signed by rival clubs in the off-season, but also because St Kilda players will return to training in just over a month. They can't leave a decision too long because it'll be the new season, not the Saints, that will come marching in. The last man to take the Saints into the grand final, Ross Lyon, is firming among the potential candidates, but club bosses insist they didn't approach Lyon or any other contenders before Ratten's axing, although another former Saints coach remains sceptical.
I doubt whether St Kilda will have made this call unless they had a suitable replacement, which I'm sure they've already got sorted.
Annie Kearney, ABC News, Melbourne.
Now, Paul Higgins, tell us what more we can expect from this weather.
Oh boy, I mean, it's just been amazing the last few days, hasn't it? Well, Mary, the flooding will continue, but at least we have got rid of that big area of rainfall that caused it. Strathbogie was the state's wettest spot the last couple of days, a total of 226 millimetres of rain. Today we had some showers in the south and the east, and you can even see some thunderstorms there in Gippsland. 18 millimetres at Falls Creek and Mount Hotham, the biggest totals, and as warm as 21 at Orbost and Sale. The constant rain in Melbourne stopped in the early hours of the morning, and here's how much filled your gutters or maybe had them overflowing. Today's been a mix of sunshine and showers, even a few thunderstorms. 6 millimetres of rain at Kew and Ringwood, a city high of 18.3 at 3:38, and in the Friday night streets now, 16 degrees. Adelaide had a few spots of rain this morning and some showers late today down in Hobart. Well, that heavy rain has gone, moving off the coast mid-morning. Behind it, though, we had a weak trough, and that kicked off a few showers over Victoria. And the tail end of a cold front is clipping the southwest of WA. That will cross Tasmania and southern Victoria tomorrow, so we'll get a shower or two from that in our south. Then high pressure is going to stabilise our weather, but unfortunately, more rain is heading to the nation's east mid-next week. At this stage, though, you can see the bullseye of it is mostly to the north of Victoria, but it might curl back around. Tomorrow, Hobart's in for a few afternoon showers. Sunny in Perth. Canberra, Sydney and Brisbane will be mostly sunny, and in Adelaide, partly cloudy. Back home, a weak pressure trough will push just a few showers across southern Victoria, mostly in the afternoon, and most of those in the southwest by the look of it. We'll have some early fog in the north, then a cool and partly cloudy Saturday with a westerly breeze. Now, there are major flood warnings for parts of the Avoca, Broken, Campaspe, Goulburn, King, Loddon, Maribyrnong, Ovens and Wimmera rivers, plus the Severn and Castle Creeks and Mount Emu Creek, and moderate flooding on the Barwon, Kiewa, Werribee and Yarra rivers. On the bay, a west to northwesterly 10 to 15 knots, strong winds on the central and Gippsland coasts. Still have a few showers popping around Melbourne at the moment, but they are becoming more isolated, partly cloudy tomorrow morning, becoming cloudier in the afternoon and the chance of a shower, 9 to 18 degrees and a westerly wind. Sunday, partly cloudy again and a shower or two. Light winds 17. Morning fog, then partly cloudy Monday 18. And then mostly sunny. Good news, Tuesday 22, Wednesday 23. A few showers then on Thursday and Friday, Mary.
Thanks, Paul. And that's it for tonight. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow night from 7. Until then, have a great evening.